Leaders from more than 90 countries and international institutions are in Switzerland as Ukraine tries to persuade countries to sign up to its peace plan. President Volodymyr Zelensky greeted officials as they arrived at the meeting in the resort town of Burgenstock. Now, Russia wasn't invited, and its main backer, China, is also absent. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, French President Emmanuel Macron, and US Vice President Kamala Harris are there. Now, President Zelensky justified excluding Russia from the proceedings and said that Moscow would be informed when the time was right.
There is no Russia here. Why? Because if Russia was interested in peace, there would be no war. We must decide together what a just peace means for the world and how it can be achieved in a truly lasting way. The UN Charter is the basis for us. And then, when the action plan is on the table, agreed by all and transparent for the peoples, then it will be communicated to the representatives of Russia.
Let's take a closer look at this with Orysia Lutsevych, who's Deputy Director of the Russia and Eurasia Programme at the Chatham House think tank and heads their Ukraine Forum. She joins us from London. Welcome to DW. The way President Zelensky was talking there, this meeting sounds less like an actual peace conference and more a way for Ukraine's backers to present Russia with what they hope will be a fait accompli. How do you see it?
I see this as a quite serious effort, global effort, to build the second track to finding a solution for peace in Ukraine. The first track is, of course, military. The outlines of the future peace will be decided on the battlefield, because we do see so far two sides pushing, and especially Russian side that is pushing. This diplomatic track, the summit on peace in Ukraine, is a way for Kyiv to demonstrate that is indeed seeking a negotiated outcome that will satisfy international law. And it's significant that the global agenda, the players throughout the globe are actually convening to look at what could be steps that will ensure peace. But I think this is peace the day after military campaign is over, not exactly leading to the cessation of hostilities, because, to be honest, at the moment, there's no will from the Russian side to take any ceasefire in honesty.
Right. Alternative proposals, though, are from Russia, from China, from Brazil, who are all not there. That to one side. Is there consensus amongst the attendees on Ukraine's proposals?
I think what Ukraine is trying to do is to unite the world around the UN Charter. And it is clear how often President Zelensky mentions the UN Charter. It is basically trying to say that the borders should not be violated by force. Because what Chinese, as you call, alternative six-point plan suggests is that it's okay, actually, to change borders by force. The might is right, and let's freeze the situation in order to basically restore global connections and to lift sanctions on Russia. But that is actually rewarding the perpetrator. And this is why not only Ukraine, but many other members of the summit insist that Russia should not only withdraw its troops from Ukraine, but also be held accountable for the war crimes it is committing in Ukraine.
OK, so as you say, what's being discussed there in Switzerland is essentially for the day after there is a military cessation. It is more likely that this is going to drag on for years and years and years. And we've heard from the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, saying that a frozen conflict is what she called a recipe for disaster. Do you think there will be a clear win one way or the other on this, or will this drag on?
We are living as this war unfolds. I don't think nobody knows fully, but I can tell with clarity that it depends very much on what actions we take today, nations of the world, Ukraine, its allies, And this defines actually the duration of this war. The protraction of the conflict is playing in Russia's and Chinese hands. Europe is suffering with Ukrainian refugees, with constant shellings, with the genocidal type of war where Russians are, deporting Ukrainian children, torturing prisoners of war, burning libraries. So the decisions we take today will define how long this war lasts. The West and Ukraine's allies are not impartial in this war. I think that's important to understand. If we really say it's existential, then we have to take a decision today to prove it.
Thank you for joining us, Orysia Lutsevych from Chatham House. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our chief political correspondent, Nina Haase, is there at the Swiss resort of Burgenstock. Welcome, Nina. Let's start with the objection that we heard in our report from China. What is the point of a peace conference without Russian participation?
Well, when you enter this area here that is extremely well protected, high security everywhere, you see posters where it says path to peace. But if you want to stay in this image, what really is happening here today is that people around the world are taking small baby steps on a very, very difficult hike up a very, very steep hill. So nobody's expecting peace between Russia and Ukraine to be brokered here today. But the hope is that this summit can lay the ground for another summit where potentially Russia could then attend. But of course, a lot of things need to happen between now and then. Now, Russia was not invited this time around, and this is, we're hearing, because Russia, when it heard that this summit was going to take place, said straight away that it didn't think much of this idea and so wasn't going to turn up anyway. Now, the interesting point, of course, is that President Zelensky said that he's extremely proud to have all continents represented here in Switzerland today. But if you look at the details, that is extremely interesting when you look at who is representing their countries. Countries like India and Indonesia, so countries that don't want to pick sides between the West, so the supporters of Ukraine, and their allies, Russia. They are not sending their top leaders to this summit. They're sending ministers or diplomats. But this is an opportunity, essentially, for people around the world to get some face-to-face opportunity to have serious talks about finding a way forward, really. But again, small baby steps.
So given those lowered expectations, what can we expect to come out of today's meeting?
Yeah, lowered expectations indeed. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz compared it today to a small plant that needs watering. So we're hearing that a document is indeed in the making, but of course the wording is going to be very tricky indeed. Ukrainian President Zelensky is also here in Switzerland today, and he tried to remind everybody that it's really Russia that is the aggressor, that Ukraine is the victim, and that people need to be reminded of this. And the Ukrainian president has 3 topics that he wants to discuss here, where he thinks that it's got the potential to find minimal consensus amongst all those countries in terms of the ban on the use of nuclear weapons, food security, and the issue of deported children from Ukraine. Those are issues where he is hoping that there can be an agreement between all the countries around the world, that they'll reaffirm that these things need to be sorted out, need to be dealt with, so that they can reaffirm their commitment to the UN Charter, for example, that some countries are saying Russia has violated. But of course, the details in other topics are much trickier when we hear that William Ruto, for example, from Kenya, says that Russia's war needs to be condemned, but at the same time he says all parties to the war need to soften their positions.
Okay, thank you, Nina. DW's chief political correspondent, Nina Haase, at the Ukraine Peace Summit in Switzerland.